How are you today? Hi.
Julius Torrevillas is behind the wheel of a Santa Barbara MTD bus 5 days a week. A full-time job that pays $19 an hour to the jovial driver with the unforgettable beard. When his workday's over, he moves from his bus to another vehicle, his van, where he lives.
A regular full-size mattress.
This is home because he makes too much to qualify for public housing, but can't afford rent in the high-cost city of Santa Barbara.
Wow, that story just one example of the difficulties faced by hard-working American men and women as they try to make ends meet on inadequate wages. Now, you may think this man's situation is an outlier, but you may be surprised to find that the problem is far, far worse than you might have imagined. According to the National Wage Index out today, 51% of working Americans are making less than $30,000 a year. Now, as you can see from this chart, that amount is just barely above the poverty line for a family of 5 and less than $100 a week over the poverty line for a family of 4. Let me repeat that. More than half of working Americans are making just above the poverty level. And that doesn't even take into account the 8 million who are currently unemployed. I think we can all agree that this is not how life is supposed to go in the United States of America, where hard work is supposed to result in a decent lifestyle. The question is, who's to blame? Is this a failure of government or a failure of the private sector to better share the wealth by paying employees a better, more livable wage? Joe, how would you answer that question?
That's a tough question, isn't it? I mean,
well, you know, everybody's always all too ready to blame whoever the president is at the time. But is it really his fault?
There are higher taxes, higher cost of health care, higher education costs.
What if they were lower?
If they were lower?
Lower taxes. Would it matter?
Can I go back to that package that we watched beforehand? And that's what we showed of the bus driver. $19 an hour. If he's working a full week, I understand that it's hard to afford an apartment on your own, but if you find a roommate or two...
He's got a wife.
He's got a wife. He and the wife live in the van.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty hard to get a roommate.
I have a hard time believing that you can't find an apartment somewhere that you can afford, that you have to live in a van. It can't be that extreme.
Well, part of it is he's in Santa Barbara.
He has a van. He could drive to another city that costs less money.
In that area, it's tough to do.
All right.
And that's where his job is. However, we still see all these people all over America having this problem. Bill?
Yeah, this is like a hot button issue for me on this, because it is a little bit of everybody to blame, and it sounds like a bit of a cop out, but it's true. There's been a purposeful drive to lower wages of American workers. We know this because Alan Greenspan sat in front of the Senate Immigration Committee in 2009 and said we have to drive down the wages of Americans so that we can now become competitive on the world stage in terms of wages.
Let me
what
interrupt
an insane
you,
kind of policy.
You sent that quote to me and I thought it was fascinating. Basically, if I understood it correctly, what Greenspan was saying, by making it so hard for high-skilled people to come in from other countries, we're artificially creating this expensive market for skilled workers, and that money is coming from the less skilled workers.
Here's what we do. We lower the standard of living and the quality of life for people.
So what
That's
you're
a great idea. Let's go do that.
What you're supporting is more legal immigration of high-skilled people.
Well, no. The reason in that particular quote, he was saying the reason we need to bring in more workers, foreign workers on visas, is because we're going to pay them less and we're going to drive down the wages of American workers. What do you think the anger in this country is about? Why do you think Bernie Sanders has such traction? Because he's talking about this. Why do you think Trump has such traction?
So
people are furious in this country. It's a combination of private lobbyists, private industry, failure of government policy, and the outrageous notion that somehow the government should be involved in driving down the wages of American workers so that we can quote unquote, because that was a policy. What Greenspan was talking about in that soundbite, that was a purposeful policy
of government. Ben?
Well, just a couple points. The first thing is on who is to blame, and there are obviously a million factors when you're looking at any part of an economy.
You're right, but you and I both know that find me a Republican out there, I'm sure there's a couple, maybe you, who won't lay this right at the feet of Obama, no matter how nonsensical that might be.
Well, not just Obama, but the entire political class and the entire political establishment, in part. And there's also a difference. Let's be clear between between growing a pie and then wages growing in proportion to that pie
that,
versus how the pie is shifted.
We have recently grown the pie for those corporations that are showing increasingly good earnings year after year after year, and that pie is not being
But a couple of things about that. One trend that we're seeing in the economy, and you see this across a number of sectors, is automation. Why is there such a quick acceleration in automation today? I would argue it's because the cost of labor, whether it's the legal costs, the HR costs, the compliance costs,
so you didn't get the point where it's cheaper
all
to
of those
have a robot.
costs, makes it so that actually progressives, in my view, and I'm not trying to put a political spin on it, are actually in effect pushing out of work lower skilled laborers who actually tend to be progressives.
So if that's true, and it could be, then basically the choice is to get no work at all or live poorly. Let me move on to the next question. I really want to know if any of you see the decline of the labor unions as part of this. The American Sociological Review does. They say it accounts for 1/3 to 1/2 of the rise of income inequality. Joe, was the destruction of the American unions in the private market a part of this puzzle?
Or have they been?
Pretty much. I mean, they're 15% tops now have unions in their private businesses?
Right. They've certainly been weakened. No.
You don't think they have, Ben?
Well, my view is that you want to decrease barriers to entry. I work with a group called Gen FKD, which works with millennials who are younger, and entrepreneurship is declining among younger people. So we want to kill those barriers to entry, and unions are one of the killers.
So again, we're going to create entrepreneurs, hoping that they'll pay a more decent wage to the people who help them get there, but they don't.
Yeah, but it's not like there was a conspiracy to get rid of governments, or of unions. Millennials don't want them because they want the opportunity that it creates by them not being there.
Yes. Good for those starting businesses, not good for those who work in businesses. No matter whom you may blame for this problem, there's little question that income inequality continues to be a serious challenge to the middle class. Stay with us because we're going to politics next.